This week on Industry Relations, Rob and I discuss week 1 of the Sitzer Burnett trial. Let's go. This is Industry Relations, a podcast that's at the intersection of real estate and technology from an insider's perspective, with Rob Hahn and Greg Robertson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Industry Relations with Rob and Greg. This is your co-host, the Notorious Rob Hahn. And as always, with me, the fabulous Greg Robertson.
Wow, Rob. Thank you for that, I guess.
I got to get over this head cold, so I'm trying to be excited.
Yeah, you know? That's good. That's good. Go take a walk out there. That's get things moving again. That's always helped me. Whenever I was kind of down and out.
Yeah, not right this minute after we record this very important, very special episode.
Well, hey, I will say this, and thanks again to Ed for joining us, because we got some great feedback on that.
Yep.
Inman News kind of linked to that article in their live update feed, which was I thought was very gracious of them. And more than one or two people, or a lot of people had either reached out on Twitter or myself and saying, "Hey, man, Ed brought it." Right. A lot of detail that they hadn't heard before.
Yep.
And some context to everything. So once again, many thanks to Ed Zorn for joining us last week. And hopefully, I think what a couple of people have asked for is that after all this is done with, we can have kind of a debrief of what happened here. Right. Yeah. So
I do feel the need, though, to make one small comment. You're exactly right. Ed was fantastic, but there have been a bunch of people like on Twitter and social media saying Ed Zorn, General Counsel of CRMLS, and Ed made it very clear when he was recording with us, this was his opinion, not reflective of CRMLS or any other organization he's part of. I just want to make that
very
100% clear. Okay,
right.
All right,
yeah.
So having said that, the show is on. You know?
Yeah.
Like
it's like mana for brains like ours that follow this stuff here.
Yeah. Content creators in real estate are gonna be like rubbing them the mittens.
Yep, exactly. So let's just get into it. The week started off with a bang because the fucking Wall Street Journal wrote just this op-ed piece, which was just brutal and called NAR a cabal,
a cartel.
Was it cartel or cabal? I think it was one of the C words.
It was cartel. Yeah.
And really just ripped into it. And as much as I don't like to get into the tinfoil hat conspiracy stuff, it just reeks to me of there are no coincidences. Right? That these things are all played out, and the Illuminati or anybody else is out there is all lining up here. Now, for instance.
Oh my Lord. Oh God, Greg, I know where you're going to go with this. Okay, bring it. Come on, go there.
So first of all, just like, again, one of the tired cliches, hackneyed, arguments they make is like, well, hey, the price of buying a stock has gone down in the last 10, 20 years, but the price of buying a house hasn't, right? I don't know how many times we have to kind of explain to people that buying a house is not like buying a stock, right? The world, everybody around the world only pays 1.5%. We have to pay, 5 or 6% or whatever it is, right? It's too, the rent's too damn high. The commission's too damn high, right? And again, leaving out, what, many regard to the envy of the world as far as the transparency that the MLS provides and all that. And then let's just talk about overall arching, who is the Wall Street Journal owned by? They're owned by News Corp. Okay. News Corp is owned by, Rupert Murdoch. And, those guys would love nothing more than the Australian model of real estate where they're charging directly to sellers to advertise on their portals, right? They've recently installed a new CEO that comes from that world. So, did they, typically when you read that stuff, there's this disclaimer that says, oh, News Corp is also owned by blah, blah, blah. I didn't see anything there. So, really just come on, man.
I can't believe you went full on conspiracy theory.
Aha!
Yeah. Considering that, so I will address that aspect real quick. So what is the...
Rob, I think you'd be on my side. This is right up your alley of the Illuminati and people are like,
I'm a big believer in it, except when it really just doesn't actually add up. So quick thing.
Jesus.
You're right.
I've lost Rob Hahn. We've lost Cronkite.
News Corp does own realestate.au.co or whatever, right? Okay. REA Group.
REA, yeah.
Yeah. What's the other... what is the United States portal that News Corp owns?
Realtor.com.
Oh, say again. What's that word?
Realtor.com.
Right. So if NAR is sued and dragged through the mud, what brand does that hurt?
Again,
does it hurt?
It's not a
Realtor brand, maybe.
Listen.
I'm just asking.
This is wordplay here, okay?
I'm just saying that the American portal that News Corp owns is literally called Realtor.com.
Yeah, again, things can be changed.
The Wall Street Journal,
it's the underlying business model that I'm talking about, not the naming, not the URL name. I'm talking about the underlying business model.
I'm just saying, man. If anything, if I were much more inclined toward conspiracy, it would be the other way. That they should be out there saying,
as
NAR
long
is
as
the greatest. Realtors are amazing because you should go to Realtor.com to check your houses.
They can use the same name. It's just the business model that I'm talking about. They want that changed, right? I don't think these guys would be too upset if the way that they could change their business model for Realtor.com could be changed, but still, they're still an NAR and they're still realtors. I don't think they give a shit.
All right. I don't know how that's possible because, if this lawsuit goes the other way, then there'll be 100,000 realtors. And then what's the point of having a website called Realtor.com?
100,000 realtors. That's your prediction.
200,000 realtors or whatever it is, right?
God, you're so I'm the doomsday guy and you're saying that?
That's not me saying it, dude. It's a whole bunch of people in the industry talking about if this goes, we're gonna lose.
Please
hold on a second.
Not Ed didn't say that. Ed has said that he doesn't think that any way this goes is gonna matter one inkling bit about how we conduct real estate.
Yeah, and Ed's just wrong. So, excuse me. On that front, I think he's right about a lot of stuff that he pointed out, but to think that there'll be no differences, there's going to be some losses. Anyway, that's about the conspiracy theory side. What was your other big takeaway in the first week? Because this is the plaintiff's week. And now we are recording this. Hold on. We are recording this at 10 a.m. Pacific time on Friday. Yeah. So there may be things that are happening in the court in Missouri as a recording that we're not aware of. Just want to clarify that. Okay.
Right. So then I think Ed was right about the jury selection that, it didn't really, I think they had to be basically either renters or they could have previously owned a home. But they weren't really, as you would say, they were 9 renters that couldn't get out of getting jury duty. So we'll see what that is. I didn't see any demographic breakdown from any of the live updates and,
nope.
From Inman or others out there. What else? And then, so now, and this is something you brought up a lot, is they are definitely kind of, focusing in on these training materials, right? That a lot of those have. And it really is kind of weird because, and I forget what is that lawsuit where it's you have to show that this person made harm, right? There's a term there, but
what do you mean?
Was it leaders maybe?
Leader versus NAR, the buyer.
Well, maybe or something else. Where it's basically you have to say I'm suing the person that is actually responsible for this predicament, right?
Okay.
And it seems like the franchisors anywhere and the other guys are they're kind of far removed from causing harm there. So there's a little bit of problem there that I think, but focusing on. Okay, all right.
That's a wrong analysis, but okay, yeah.
But going back to the training stuff, it's like, so they seem to hone in on, well, twofold here. So on one angle, they're saying, well, nobody knows this stuff is negotiable. It's just like it's rubber stamped, and nobody can go in there and understand whether it's the seller or the buyer that commission is negotiable, right?
Right.
And so that's one thing. And then the second thing, they focus on training materials that highlight the 6% and how to kind of negotiate, making sure that you keep your commission. And to me, those are kind of, and I know there's differences between a seller negotiating and a buyer's agent negotiating, but those to me are very conflicting arguments, right? Where, well, nobody knows that they can negotiate. Oh, by the way, let's show you all these fucking scripts, that have that are talking about helping realtors negotiate their commission. Well, which is it? Are they not? They don't know to negotiate, or why do they build all these fucking scripts then to help them negotiate if they're not negotiating? So I just think that there's that doesn't kind of jive with me. They're like, it doesn't match to me, right? And then they are highlighting, and I think the way that the defendants, in these cases, the corporations like Berkshire and Keller Williams are saying, well, these are just models. They're basically using the 6% as a straw man in a sense, or an example. It doesn't have to be 6%. They never say it has to be 6%. It's just that's what they put in there. And you could go back and forth of whether that's a strong argument or weak argument, right? What do they put in there? X, or they could put anything in there. They just use that. So
let's go through a couple of these in order. I actually thought so before that, first of all, why they're going after this training material so much, right? When I look at it, is the harm here that the plaintiffs are claiming is that these brokers, through NAR and NAR itself, engage in a conspiracy, right? They engage
through the MLS,
right?
NAR,
right. They engage in this agreement, this scheme, right, to keep prices high. So the training stuff is relevant in the sense of, so all these brokers, the Remax, the Keller Williams, you guys are part of this scheme, and the training materials kind of show your active participation in this scheme, right? Like that's how they're trying to portray it, I think, right? Which is why when Remax and Realogy settled, one of the things that they settled was, we're no longer going to require that our people be realtors, and we're going to change our trading, right? The part that I thought was damaging, I'm basing this strictly on just reporting from Inman. By the way, shout out to Inman, shout out to Andrea for doing a great job.
Oh yeah,
shout out to Real Estate News; they're doing some great jobs as
Austin.
Well. Yeah, but one of the things I saw was the lawyer for the plaintiffs kept hammering, and there are sections of like the Keller Williams or the Remax training material that would talk about, quote, standard 6%, right? The standard commission. I think that's really hurtful, right? So because it's like, on the one hand,
standard,
because they use that language, like Keller Williams.
Is that in the slides?
Yes, according to, again, reporting.
I don't remember hearing that they used the word standard in there, but okay.
I distinctly remember that. So like what you're talking about is like nobody knew that it was, it was okay. So that's the first thing. I think that's why they're hammering it. In the whole like, which is it? It's no one knew that it could be negotiated, or are the agents training all these agents, right, to negotiate the contract, right? I mean, I kind of get your point. The no one knew that it was negotiable was mostly coming from the plaintiffs, right? Like that's what I heard. The actual named plaintiffs took the stand and talked about, like, Ellis, Holly Ellis, I didn't know it was negotiable, right? Stuff like that. And then there's, I can't remember, somebody else.
I think what and this is why everybody talks about, like, from going forward, it's good to get buyer's agreements. Is that it's very upfront when you first sign a listing agreement,
right?
But from the buyer side, the buyer might start working with the agent pre any sort of like, okay, let's talk about costs. Until much later, right? So we need to bring that forward. And we've been talking about this forever. It's like, you got to get your agents trained to talk about those things a lot more, in the beginning of your relationship with your buyers, where it's already built in with sellers, right? Because of the listing agreement. So I think that's going to be a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, look, you should be signing exclusive buyer agency agreements anyway.
Yeah,
right? I mean, that's just a good practice. But I think the whole, like, I didn't know it's negotiable was coming from the named plaintiffs. And I think what is damaging is where a couple of them said that the 6% was already filled out in the agreement by the listing agent, right? So they didn't realize it was. Now, here's why I think it's damaging.
But I go buy a car and they put the list price of the car on there. It's like, I look at that and I'm going, I'm not fucking paying that. Right. I mean, that that's illegal now is to put your first offer out there. I mean, come on.
Let me put it this way. I think that's pretty powerful for the jury. Right. The 9 renters, because I think that's probably kind of their experience too. And cars are like slightly different, right? Because cars, people are just used to this notion of, I'm going to negotiate for the car. When it comes to house, I bet you they're kind of like, oh, yeah, if it was already written in there, I would just sign it. I think that's where it's a little bit damaging. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
No, right. It wasn't as if the industry, like, if the practice was, listen, the listing agent came in, sat down with you, went through your comps and did all that and said, okay, now let's figure out what commission rate it's going to be. And then I'll write it in with you sitting there after I explain it. It's like already pre-filled in. Like, that pre-filled in is going to be a little bit damaging, I think, talking to jury, right? Because I'm going to bet that most of them are not thinking the way you're thinking. Because, again, they're not like real estate industry people, right? They're just like renters. It's like, it's already filled in. That must
we
be
don't know
standard.
if they've had bought a house before in the past or anything else. So that's
we don't
going to
know.
Be,
but if they have, that's potentially even more damaging because they're going to be like, oh, yeah, that's right. When I sold my house, it was pre-filled in.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. These guys are totally, scamming us.
Well, like, 2 things, it's funny how it's an ex-cop and now the chairman of Mothers Against Drunk Driving.
Yeah.
They just, these are pillars of the society.
Absolutely.
I mean, which is great gameplay for the attorneys. I'll give them that. But I mean, come on, man.
Absolutely.
I mean, I just, whatever. And then just going back to your conspiracy thing. I mean, these are, the average agent is a 59-year-old woman, right?
Yep.
They're independent contractors.
Yep.
The churn rate of these agents that are supposed to have conspired together is like 30% of them leave the industry every year. These don't. This doesn't sound like the right ingredients you would want to have to create a conspiracy.
Yeah,
right?
but the conspiracy claim is not against the 60-year-old agent, right? The conspiracy claim is against NAR and these brokers. And I do think it was reported in Inman that the plaintiff's expert, Craig T. Schulman, an associate professor of economics at Texas A&M,
that guy, yeah.
When he brought up the NAR makes $225 million a year from all these dues, like, that was the connection that the plaintiffs wanted the jury to make, right? Conspiracy is not these agents. The conspiracy NAR trying to drive dues dollars, right? And I think he drew that. So who knows how damaging that could be or not be?
Didn't they ask him if he had any proof or any sort of evidence of that? And he said no.
I don't think I remember reading something about the proof of evidence, but it wasn't about the commission. It wasn't about the dues dollars. That's evident, right? Like,
right.
NAR's 1.6 million people paying $150 a year. I mean, right? 225 million. Again, you have 9 renters sitting in the jury who probably aren't millionaires. and you just keep hammering. Yeah, that's why these guys did it, because they made 200 million. Like, that's their incentive to do this. We'll see. We'll see how powerful it is. But yeah, I love that one of the plaintiffs is the daughter of a realtor. It's like, well, that's rough. That's gonna be tough to overcome.
And yeah, good lord.
Yeah.
All right, so let's continue on. So then, I guess there was a little bit of fighting where, little kerfuffle of the plaintiff's attorney kind of having with,
the home services lawyer.
The home services lawyer, right?
Yeah.
And whether or not they're going to bring a witness or anything else. I don't, the Texas A&M professor, okay, he made a connection there, but the training manual stuff. I mean, is there any sort of like, to me, the biggest thing that really happened this week was a Wall Street Journal article, right? I mean, I'm not sure in the from what I've read of the transcripts, or not transcripts, but the summarized from Andrea. Do you think there's a bombshell, smoking gun? I mean, maybe I'm just too used to be television or something. It's a television or dramatized series or something. But I'm not getting like, booyah, man, we got you.
Yeah.
What about you?
No, like that was the kerfuffle, right?
Yeah.
Because the plaintiff's attorney got angry because he said, okay, well, you're going to fly in this expert from Australia, and the defense counsel was all cagey about it. Like, yeah, on TV we see the last minute surprise witness.
Right.
That's TV, man. Like in the real world, like you let the other guy know, hey, by the way, here's the list of who I'm calling so you can prepare. Who are you calling so you can prepare? And a lot of litigation, and I have some friends who do litigation, they talk about it's very collegial, right? Because you're not like,
it's a job. Right, for them,
it's a job, and you're just trying to say, okay, let me present my case, you present your case, and we'll let the judge or the jury decide who's right. But I'm not trying to get one over on you. I'm not trying to get you. Like, I think that's why the Ketchmark got so mad. So no, I don't think there's going to be any gotchas. Everyone's going to be well prepared, right? They'll be like, oh, okay, like everyone on the defense side knew this Professor Schulman was going to be testifying. I'm sure they even got his expert memo ahead of time. So they knew exactly what he was going to say, that they could craft their responses and, undermine his credibility or do whatever, right? So no, I don't think there's going to be any gotchas. I'd be shocked if there were,
Yeah, so today's Friday, and in our conversation with Ed, he identified like key points within the trial when there could be a settlement, right?
Correct.
So one of the key points was the end of the first week with the plaintiffs, right? Where oh my God, they just smacked the shit out of us. Let's convene
settle
the weekend and then let's settle. So, again, we're 10 a.m. Friday, the 20th here, October 20th. We haven't heard exactly what has come out Friday, the full day today. So we'll find out that. But I mean, I'm not sure I'm reading anything in there. And we're not in there. And it's so lame that they don't have, it's the show me state. I mean, put a goddamn camera in there, man. I mean, what the hell?
I feel like that's something that a lot of people talk about federal courts generally. Yeah. Like, why doesn't every federal court live stream every hearing, every trial? But
so
they don't.
So I don't, barring anything happening today, I'm not sure if I see some sort of, smoking gun or something where it's going to be where Berkshire or NAR, at this one point, as Ed said, is a chance to settle. What do you think?
So this is where, because again, neither of us are in the room. I have no idea. I don't think there's going to be like a smoking gun or a gotcha thing. What I do think is possible, though, is I'm going to guess that all the lawyers, special defense lawyers, are reading the face of the jury, right? Because that's something we just don't know. Unless Andrea can say, as Schulman was speaking, the jury was nodding along,
things like that.
Versus like, you know what I mean? Like, That's the difference. So I think by the end of this, if the defense lawyers come back and they're like, yo, man, the jury bought the plaintiff's story, right? It's not like a gotcha, but what you don't know is the jury going to believe me or believe the other
Right.
guy?
Right.
I think if they walk away with, and again, we don't know if they say, yeah, the jury was nodding their head and I think they're really leaning heavy towards the plaintiffs, then I could see Home Services or Keller Williams be like, let's just settle, right? We're going to lose this. Let's just settle. I don't know if NAR can. We talked about NAR settlement, you know?
Well, I mean, I think Ed thinks that they're going to settle. So the next point would be, I mean, as far as the defendant settling would be at the end of the trial.
Right.
Right. That would be a next point that maybe they could do it. And then it would be 30 days from the end of the trial when they basically have to file an appeal and post bond. Right. So I think one of the three things, at the end of the day, we're at one of the 3 points that Ed had identified that could be, and it could happen. I'm sure it could happen anytime. But,
that's right. It could happen anytime.
But those are the 3 kind of points that he laid out.
That's right.
So
that's right.
And then, so that brings us to I guess, next week. Well, here's another thing, about that I kind of wrote about. And, if, you're talking about putting this 6% everywhere in these training manuals and everything else, it's all prevalent and everything else. I just seem to remember, for a while there, all I ever saw was Redfin's 1% sign everywhere.
Okay.
Right. And discount brokerages. I hope that NAR at some point shows, have you seen one of these billboards before? And I think possibly some guys are going to go, yes. Well, did that inform you about buying real estate in any way? That maybe, that this is all, that there's not a set rate here, that there are different real estate, different commission rates that you can pay?
Yeah. I mean, to me, the thing that I'm most curious about is what happens next week in the following sense, right? As Ed talked about in the motions in limine, in other words, the hundreds of requests from lawyers, we're not going to do this testimony, we're not going to talk about that, right? One of the things that came out that was surprising to me was how NAR and the defense will present a case that talks about how positive the MLS system, the cooperation compensation is, right?
Yeah.
And I remember being surprised because this judge in a summary judgment motion had said, I'm going to do per se on this. And if you do per se analysis on this under antitrust law, the positives don't matter. And lack of damages don't matter. Simply the fact that you tried to do price fixing is the crime. That's the violation, right? So, but
isn't there so are they now in per se, or is it at the end of the week he could take it out, or
I don't know.
He said he could invoke it because as it stands right now, it's not invoked, right?
That's exactly it. So that was my question, right? With Ed is, okay, well, when does that come into play? And Ed's answer, if I remember correctly, was one place for sure is in jury instructions. Right. So at the end of the trial, both sides rest, and the judge tells the jury, hey, as you go back and now consider who gets to win here, ignore everything NAR said about how positive this is, because price fixing is per se illegal. So the only thing you have to decide, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, is whether these defendants came to an agreement, right? That's the conspiracy, right? Whether it had any positive effects or not, it doesn't matter. All you're deciding is, did they have an agreement, yes or no? That would be per se analysis. So that was jury instruction, but that's at the end of the trial. The other place that Ed said was the judge could essentially stop a line of questioning or a line of defense, right? So if the NAR lawyer gets up and starts talking about how wonderful, cooperation compensation is and how this really helps, Black and Hispanic families, afford representation. And the judge goes, just stop. Right? You could just stop with that, Mr. Glass, because per se.
And I think he also said maybe at the end of this week, if he thought that the plaintiffs gave such a strong argument about, and that he did per se, that maybe, possibly next week they would be handcuffed a little bit.
Right. Like if he maybe just announces it on Monday, okay, everybody, it's the defense's case, but so you all know, this is per se, right? So if you're going to go on and on about stuff that's irrelevant, like how wonderful the system is for consumers, then you could let's just save some time, right? Like I'm not going to allow that, right? And so who knows what we'll see. But that's the thing that I will be watching the most, right? That's the thing I'll be watching the most. The other thing I will be watching is just my sense of this, man, just my gut feeling. I don't think it's a great idea for lawyers to try and contradict expert witnesses. In other words, like when the plaintiffs have brought out somebody who's like, I'm a professor of economics and I know economics, I know whatever. And here's my analysis and here's why this, and I think he made some really strong statements, like this is the clearest example of price fixing he's ever seen or something like that.
Yeah.
Right? You don't want lawyers to be like, this is not the clearest example of price. You want your own experts. You want other economists, other experts to come out and say, no, that guy from Texas A&M was dead wrong. This is not whatever. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm sure the NAR and the corporate defendants have to call their own expert witness. I'm almost positive. So I think that would be the thing to watch for the defense's case.
Right.
Other than that, like I said, man, the only thing I really wish is I wish we were able to look at the expressions of the jury.
Yeah.
Or note taking, or just.
Maybe I'll send a direct a DM to Andrea about that. Like, hey, this is the kind of reporting we want, right? So, because you're right. It's like, a flummox, a bored looked, a nodding.
That's right.
And, Ed had said this, is like, anytime you go to jury trial, just because they're human beings,
right,
you're already at a 30% chance you're going to lose, right? So that's just built into it, right? So you just gotta, the human factor is a huge thing.
Right. And like, who's more likable? Like the lawyers that are actually arguing, is one of them like particularly likable? Does he seem like he's really jiving with the jury, right? Whereas a different one maybe isn't. Like, it's all that stuff that we just don't know, we just don't know. And that's the information we need to get. Let's see. I'm just checking this morning. There was an update, 11:32. It's funny. Inman does all these surveys as they're doing it.
Yeah. I think they're just trying to tap into what people are thinking.
Glass keeps asking questions he wants yes or no answers to, and Shulman keeps trying to offer fuller answers. Glass keeps telling him that he can wait until redirect from plaintiff's attorney to give those answers. I mean, this is what Andrew just wrote, right? That's exactly the way we need to see the jury. Because is the jury sitting there like, oh yeah, I just want yes or like, hey man, just wait your turn? Or are they like, why is this guy being such a dick?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, what are you trying to hide? It's that sort of thing. Like, unless we can see the jury's like reaction, their facial expressions, it's gonna be hard to know.
Right.
But that's I don't know. What else is there? Like, court adjourns, new mom dismissed. Let me ask you this: How closely do you think people not named Rob and Greg are paying attention to this? Like, do you think anybody in the industry, other than our peers,
certainly on the
friends?
news sites? I mean, you see, hey, the Wall Street Journal wrote an article about this, bro. I mean, so I think there's a lot of people paying attention to this.
Yeah.
We'll have to find out what happens here, but I think a lot of people are.
Thing that I'm really puzzled about, what I did not hear the lawyer go into a lot of detail this first week, the plaintiff's lawyer. I'm actually really shocked that he didn't go into a lot more detail around steering. Because to me, this entire case is about steering. Right? So I guess I was wrong, but I'm surprised he didn't talk about that at all.
Yeah, I think, the steering thing, and I think this is, Ed had said this also on another podcast. It's hard to kind of, in the model we've been in, the market we've been in for a long time, this kind of seller's market, the steering thing it's hard to make that argument, right? But when it's in a buyer's market, we're like, okay, I got 70 homes that match my, let's just make it easier. Like, 17 homes that match my buyer's criteria. That could, any one of those 17 could be great for them. Well, let me see what's going to be great for me. Mm-hmm. Right. I mean, you'd hate to see that because that's against the code of that ethics and everything else. But if you want to add to, people are human and that kind of thing, well, that could happen. But, it's been such a seller's market for so long. I think the steering argument is very hard to make when, it's a house that's, we find there's no housing on the market. It's not like you can be, an agent can be picky at all, or a buyer can be picky. Right. So, that steering argument just in the psyche right now that I think people are in with this market and has been for like a long time is it's very hard to kind of like coalesce in your head because of the way they look at the market now. Now, not to say that, there is a danger there, but I think if we were in a different situation with like a buyer's market or something, and you could kind of hear the, that type of thing there. But right. That's just some conjecture I'm making.
It might be. Yeah. I'm just, like I said, I was just a little surprised at here we are on Friday and we're not hearing any real push on the whole steering thing, right? I think one of the videotape testimony, the steering was brought up to Gary Keller, right? And then Gary Keller's like, I've never heard of it. I'm like, come on, Gary. Yeah. Okay.
Well, it's weird to you that like some of these guys are like phoning it in. I mean, I'm not phoning it literally, but I mean, that are not there.
A little bit. I mean, but then again, these are very, important.
I mean, is this how corporate work? I mean, maybe this is just how corporate America works, but it's like very rarely does a CEO or somebody actually show up live to these things. Is that a show of weakness? Is it whatever else? I don't know. I mean, it's a big deal. As somebody who's owning the place and responsible, I mean, I'd want to get a read of the jury. I'd want to kind of understand what's going on here a bit, right?
On the other hand, like, what's the cost to, Remax to have Nick Bailey fly out to Kansas City and spend, all day?
I think Nick was there. Wasn't Nick there?
I don't think so.
Oh,
I thought he was over maybe I'm wrong. Or Gary, I mean, these are pretty important people, like with real heavy responsibilities. Those companies might not be like, yeah, we want you to go burn 2 days, right, to just go testify trial, right? So if we could do it through a deposition, we'd rather do it that way.
But if you're right, and I don't agree with you, but if you're right and this is going to impact this industry as much as you think it is, where there's only going to be 200,000 realtors, what thing more important do they have to fucking worry about than this?
Well, Nick's already settled, so I don't think Nick...
Well, okay, right. But, Gary Keller then.
Right. If I were Gary, I would have shown up, But who knows? Like, who knows what the lawyers told him? Who knows what the arrangement was? I mean, what would be interesting, again, not that you and I have any insight into this, but we know that Katie Johnson is there in person.
Yeah.
Right. She's got to be reading that jury.
Right.
Like, what is she telling NAR senior leadership?
Yeah.
Like, is she telling them, no, it looks good, like they're on our side, or is she telling them we need to worry? Right.
Yeah. What somebody had reached out to me a while back and says, I would pay money to have you and Rob be the commentators of this thing. You guys should go to Kansas City and do this. I'm like, oh, first of all, no. Second
surprisingly,
of all,
well, I don't know. It depends on how big of a check he was going to write us to do that, right?
Maybe I should approach you with this beforehand. Yeah.
Yeah. No one contacted me.
Well, not being able to do it live is it would be a hamper for sure, right?
It would.
I remember watching that clips of that Johnny Depp Amber Heard thing.
Yeah.
Where they would have a guy watch it. And his reaction is like, it was sometimes an attorney. Well, that means this, and that, and that means this and that. And like when, she would make some mistake and say something wrong.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would have been great if this trial were live streamed.
Yeah.
No question.
We'd be like
so much fun
Manning TV for the Monday Night Football, right? Where it's like
exactly. Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see what this weekend has to bring. I don't know. Like, I do wish that we had more detail. Like I said, like the expressions of the juror, like a little bit more detail. And I know it's hard. It's like Andrea's doing the Lord's work over there, right? But it would be nice to get a little bit more detail.
Yeah.
Right.
I think I'm going to DM her.
Yeah.
See if they can do that.
Or maybe say it publicly,
Yeah, that's true.
And I do think it's weird that Inman keeps doing these surveys, right?
Why is that weird? It's just like, I think it's like they want to measure like, okay, what do people think before everything happened, which is their first kind of thing. And then as news drops, does that opinion change? I think that's interesting.
Because it's not an update. Like they're doing this in their live update. I'm like, do that somewhere else. Like reaction, they have like a reactions thread, but
they want the opinions of the people that are interested in, and that's why they have it in the feed because the people who are reading that are interested in it.
I guess, or it could just be like, click here to go, react.
Inman News, you're messing with Rob's aesthetic on reading experiences. He doesn't like to see those things in line with his copy. Okay, please, somebody.
I want the updates. But again, like thank God they're doing it. I think it's awesome, and we'll see. I'm sure we're gonna like next week's episode. Guess what? It's gonna be about the Sitzer Burnett. By the way, you created the hashtag and it's really taken off, man.
Yeah, I think I was either the first or one of the first to do it. So
no, you're I think you're the first to say, okay, this is it. It's hashtag Sitzer Burnett, and everyone else is now using it. I'm using it. So
I was gonna make it Sitzer. I hardly knew her, but that was too long.
Yeah. All right, so let's leave it there. And then we'll revisit this next week. Same bad channel, I guess.
Same bad time. Thanks, everybody. Listen, content is everything. Two Brothers Creative makes it look easy. Right now, business owners really only have two options. The first option is hire a big firm. Now, this big firm's going to come in, make you think that they invented all the algorithms, and start charging you thousands of dollars every month. You don't want to do that. Second option is to do it yourself. Well, that means you got to learn SEO, SEM, copywriting, marketing techniques on the web. You should be really focusing on your own product. But now there's a third option. It's called Content in a Box. Give Two Brothers Creative 30 minutes a week and they'll handle everything. Plus, they'll show you how to bring it in-house later on. They'll rebuild your marketing foundation and give you tools and techniques and a new marketing playbook that'll actually produce real results and help you grow your business. Two Brothers Creative will give you the confidence and know-how to tell the SEOs and SEMs and all those other acronyms to get fucked. You're in control now. Get started today at thecontentbox.com.